Okay, just wanted to make sure that was working, and I will start recording this meeting, and then we'll get started. All right, we'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Education of February 2nd, 2021. We'll be wrapping up budget discussions this evening. This meeting is being recorded and is fully virtual. We just ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent any meeting interference, and that you can unmute yourself using your *6 if you're on the phone. I also ask that everyone wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that people listening by phone are able to identify the person who is talking. So having said that, we will start with the pledge, and I will share the flag with you. All right, if you'll join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And that will then bring us to our commitment to community. And I will ask Ms. Leidline if she could read our statement of commitment to community.
Absolutely. As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you. All right, and then that brings us to our public participation. So during the first public participation, we welcome commentary regarding items on the agenda. If you would like to speak, you can unmute yourself using *6. And then after being recognized, state your name and address for the record. And then we just request that you keep your comments to under 3 minutes. And then just know that the board does not discuss personnel items or student matters in public, and nor do we engage in conversation during public participation. So knowing that, is there anybody who would like to address the board at this time?
Yes, I would. Melissa Bayluni, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hopefully you guys are all well.
We are.
Good. Okay. Well, I know I only have 3 minutes, but I'm Melissa Bayluni, 15 Equestrian Ridge in Newtown, obviously. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not as PTA president for Newtown Middle School, which I currently am. I understand, and I'm saddened to hear that Mrs. Valpacchio is retiring, and I wish her well. However, I am concerned over the elimination of the FACS Family and Consumer Services course at the Newtown Middle School. To phase out the FACS class at the middle school, I have, as you all know me, I have gone to the board during budget season, before budget season, when changes are being proposed. Okay, and I have complained before when it comes to either staff and curriculum, items that directly affect the children of the school district. That is my main concern. I'm not speaking for my son, I'm speaking for all the kids, okay? And I'm extremely concerned about this, and I feel it is a mistake. I don't know if it's because Mrs. Valpacchio is retiring, or the curriculum committee decided that, no one's doing it anymore. It's an old passé class, right? Who does it? And I was actually told, the middle schools, they're getting away from that. And I went, okay. So I did a little research on my own. And, to phase out the class, I mean, I have photos, okay, from my own middle school. I'm from Smithtown, Long Island, okay? And my own middle school, I see them on Facebook, and they offer the class, and it's a very viable, important class in their middle school, and their middle school happens to be 6 through 8. So, it's not just two grades. And, they do cooking, they do sewing. I saw the photos. They did desserts in disguise, really seeing boys and girls working together on recipes as a group. I feel it facilitates teamwork. It facilitates following a recipe, which is important in life, to follow directions. And it's fun, And I was just told by another Newtown mom who works in the Fairfield district, and that middle schools still do cooking and sewing in Fairfield as well, in the middle school. 6th and 7th grade, it's it's a class, like in the rotation, like it is in our district. But the 8th grade, it is an elective, right? So when I complained about this to Dr. Rodriguez, unfortunately, she does hear my complaints and my positives. One of the complaints I said to her is that, I feel that it also helps kids say, wow, I really like cooking. And then they go to the high school, and I hear that to get into the culinary, I know my time's up, to get into the culinary classes at the high school, they're very popular and they're very hard to get into. So, I mean, I don't think that they get to 9th grade going, hey, I really love cooking. I think maybe that happened in the middle school when they took facts as a rotation, and they really enjoyed it. And they took their cooking to home, at home. Hey, Mom, I want to make a recipe or something like that. I have boys, they're not really into it. They'll make a sandwich or pizza English muffins or whatever. So I'm not speaking to my son is a 7th grader. He has facts this current time. And it's a shame that he's not going to have facts next year. And the other thing is that I understand
the 3 minutes is up. Can you just wrap up?
Yeah, I'm just going to say is that my older son, who is a sophomore, absolutely adored the class and the rotation when he was at the middle school. And I am positive that if you did a poll about children, I understand, I was told by someone that it's hard to replace Mrs. Valpacchio. I really would like to, just say how important that class, I think, is to the middle school students, and it's going to be a great loss to the middle school students if it's going away. And that's all.
Thank you for sharing that with us. We appreciate your being here to share that with us.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else on the line who would like to address the board at this time? And again, you can use *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'd like to address the board. This is Katie Burke.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
We're good.
I hope everybody is dug out from the storm. And I won't take very long, but so it's Katie Burke, 48 Fountain Hill Road in Newtown. I just wanted to call and kind of echo what Melissa just said, that I don't have kids in Reed or middle school or high school yet. They're still at elementary school at Hedda Meadow. But I was very disappointed to hear that FACS was going away. I have kids who love to cook, even already at the age of 7 and 9. Actually, my daughter just took a virtual cooking class this weekend. I think that these are really important life skills, and I think, kind of echoing what Melissa said, that it feeds into these really great high school programs that we have. It's probably, too late at this point for changes to be made, but I think that it should be added back to the middle school rotation, if there is a way to bring it back for next year, and if not, going forward. So that's all I just wanted to say.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate you being here as well to share your thoughts with us. Have a good night.
Sure, no problem. You
Okay.
too.
All right. Is there anybody else on the line that would like to share their thoughts during public participation? All right. I'm hearing and seeing none, so I will close out public participation. And that will bring us to our discussion and possible action on communications on the subcommittee newsletter. On the communications subcommittee newsletter. So we can entertain a motion on that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the Communications Subcommittee newsletter.
Second.
Great. All right. So Mr. D'Elia makes the motion. Mr. Cruson seconds the motion, and we all have had a chance to review the newsletter. I don't know if anybody would like to speak to the motion or ask questions.
I mean, I've spoken to it in previous reports about the communication subcommittee, but this is the culmination of a few months worth of planning and work on creating a newsletter focused around technology in the district, something that has been much talked about over the years on the district as we've planned and ramped up our work, and then was thrown into chaos and confusion and accelerated once COVID hit. We tried not to focus on the latter part of that and mostly on technology as it's used normally through the district. But we thought that this made a good segue sort of between our previous COVID related newsletter and our upcoming budget newsletter. So we wanted to get the information out there so that people knew just what technology looked like in our district and how it's important.
Timing is perfect with it being part of our budget and a big piece. Anybody else have questions or comments? I'll just say that I appreciate all the work that went into that. It's a nice piece of work, and it really does come at a great time because technology is something that we do value in our budget, and it really explains well the reasons why. So thank you for doing all that work. All right. If there are no more questions or comments, we can vote on that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that motion passes unanimously. And thank you again for all the work that Mr. Cruson and Ms. Zukowski put into getting that newsletter together. And hopefully we'll have a budget after tonight that you can start writing about next. All right. So that brings us to the main event for this evening, and that is the discussion and possible adoption of the 2021-22 budget. Just so that we have the superintendent's proposed budget, and we can start with a motion to adopt that, and then we'll have subsequent motions to reduce or add specific amounts. And then after I anticipate to be multiple discussions. We will finish the evening with a vote to accept the main motion, which will likely have been modified by any of the past amendments. So having said all of that, we can start off with the main motion.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the superintendent's recommended budget for $81,080,697.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Dalia makes the motion and Mr. Kusan seconds the motion. Is there anyone, do you want to speak to your motion, or shall we move from there?
I would actually, is Tanya going to keep the spreadsheet like we did all the prior years, the running spreadsheet?
Yes.
I do have two technical motions that I'd like to make if before we get into our regular motions that pertains to some adjustments that need to be made. Would this be an appropriate time?
Don't we usually go over the superintendent's technical adjustments first, right?
I think I have to make a motion before we talk about them, don't I?
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. Let's start off with a motion for the technical adjustments.
So I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Education amend the motion to and accept the technical adjustments as presented for the total reduction of $42,951.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Dalia makes the motion and Mr. Kusan seconds the motion. And I guess
I could turn that over to Dr. Rodriguez if she wants to talk about that, or do you want me to make both?
no, yeah, let's do one at a time, and either we can have Dr. Rodriguez speak to it, and I don't know, I need to give
Yeah, Tanya needs, so she can put that up and we'll speak to the technical adjustments that we have.
Okay. All right, you should be able to do that now.
Yep. Can you all see that? Okay.
Yes.
So we did send you a copy, and Tanya, you can jump in as well, just to go through those adjustments. The local special ed transportation grant reallocation was a plus on this side, and then workers' comp less than 3%. You see that also in general services liability insurance. That was an adjustment. Plant operations, property insurance. We did have a plus on the non-certified salaries. That was an adjustment made. We had put in a specific amount for some non-certified salaries, which came in higher. That's at 9,500. And then in the current year, in speaking with Bob Gerbert, we're able to handle the plant building and site, the Hedda Meadow duct cleaning. So that is a $25,000 reduction. And we're also able to handle the graphics lab, as you recall, was in the budget through Perkins. So that was also a reduction. So those are all of the technical adjustments, both positive and negative. Tanya, was there something you wanted to add to that at all?
I just want to add that it's usually around this time of year that we do receive our workers' comp and our LAP insurance policy renewals. So those did come in at, one was 3% less and one was flat, which the LAP insurance was flat, and we had included a 3% increase. So that was a plus on our side. The grant was just a technical adjustment, and we typically do have these technical adjustments. Certainly the ones that we can do this year, we were taking off the Hedda Meadow duct cleaning, and then the graphics lab with the Perkins grant that came in. So that's it.
Okay. So are there any questions or comments on these adjustments? If I don't see you, just yell at me because I can't see everybody right now. Actually, can we take down the screen?
Do you want to take the screen and then we can go back to it for Esser, Michelle? We can do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Now I can see everybody. So if there are no questions or comments on that, we can vote on that. So all those in favor of those technical adjustments as presented? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. And that'll bring us to some more adjustments, I think, that came through.
I move that the Board of Education amend the motion to accept the adjustments based on anticipated ESSER II funds as presented for a reduction of $390,276.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Delia makes the motion, Mr. Kusan seconds the motion. And then Tanya, can you share that again? I'm sorry. And then Dr. Rodriguez, did you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I can add that we were also on a, just today, we were on a call with the state just to kind of review the use of ESSER II funds, and just to get some guidance. All the districts were on with respect to that. So as you know, I sent you the amount, which was actually revised. So I think it's close to, was it 625,000. And we decided to look at areas that were important going into next year's budget and things that we could look at now. And again, we didn't utilize all of the funds. These funds, just so you know, go through 2023. They can be used up through. So one of the things we looked at were the special ed teachers, one at Middlegate and 2 at Newtown Middle School. And we felt that those were significant and appropriate uses of the funding. We also put in for the reading and math interventionists at the elementary, 1.5. And the curriculum, this is the professional development, which focus for teachers, which focuses on differentiation and the co-teaching model. We feel this is significant again, what with really making sure we're meeting the needs of students in the classrooms and co-teaching with the special ed teachers, partnering in the classrooms. We have that model in the district. This is an important time to expand that, especially moving into the fall with student needs. We included MERV filters. Again, air quality is significant, and it's not just going to stop at the end of this year. So this is something that was in Bob Gerbert's plan for next year. And then the Newtown Middle School math interventionists. So again, we looked at those areas that related to COVID, but more in alignment with staffing and those kinds of resources that are going to support student apps and learning needs as we move into the fall, as well as air quality and dealing with students in the classroom, namely through differentiation and co-teaching with special education. So again, that was just part of the funding and uses. Again, these are examples. We can certainly have a conversation, and we welcome the dialogue on that, but we feel these are all appropriate. And given the discussion at today's meeting with the state, I think they are. There is an application process. So as we put a plan together for this and all the other, the remaining funding, we would make sure that we have a rationale that ties to their goals as well. Kristen Larson was also a part of that. Tanya was in the meeting as well. So we feel very confident that these are appropriate uses of the funds and would also offset things that we have already put in our budget.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments from, Mr. Delia?
Dr. Rodriguez, are there other uses for this fund beyond this $390,000? Do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. We just wanted to reserve some funding because there are things that we want to sit down and really talk about. Those areas that may come up, in March and April about perhaps an expanded, more robust summer program that could support students. I think we had that discussion with some of the board members who were asking questions. that's something we really want to sit down and talk about. There's certainly uses for technology as well. But again, we don't, we're reluctant to just offset things in next year's budget because there could be more and we just don't want to rush it either.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Ms. Zukowski?
First, I was going to bring up the cost for the summer program. Seems like that would be definitely within this bucket, and whether we wanted to add more funds to it or just shift funds from what is already there, we could talk about. But the question I have, so that would be one of the questions I would have. I would like to see rather than pulling money from the curriculum cost center to really just call out that we're going to be having an expanded summer school for those who need it. But the other thing is this, if we use all of this money this year, then we're going to look at next year being, starting essentially 600,000 plus in the hole. So, and meanwhile, we'll still have ongoing needs for next year. Would we be able to actually take some of that 600,000 and put it in the bank, so to speak, and then use it for funding COVID-related expenses for next year's budget?
So this is for obviously what we've identified, and they're good questions because we've talked about this. Again, why we didn't want to, call out all of the funding for next year alone. And these are things that were already budgeted for. We want to look at, as you mentioned, the summer program that wasn't budgeted for. So we want to make sure that we understand what our needs are, because that goes beyond the budget for next year. I know they also mentioned that there's additional funding coming. So even the 625 that we have, I believe there will be more. It's pretty certain that more will be coming. So that's why, again, we want to hang on. We want to use this to offset what we have and then look at those areas that we did not budget for that are still needs. And we still feel we would have enough funding the following year, because again, it goes through 2023, to be able to look at those areas that may or may not be budgeted for, but that we need. And I agree with you with the summer program. Something we don't have right now, but we want to make sure that we do it right and we use the appropriate funding what's needed.
Are there any further questions about this? All right. I hear the concern too about, the idea of we talk about creating a hole in the budget that needs to be filled in the next year. I think that's always something that we need to worry about, which is, what we talk about having happened with the technology budget last year, the maintenance budget last year. We're now filling that hole, and I wouldn't want to create that here as well. But I think if we reserve some of that for the following year, we'll still certainly be dealing with COVID response in 2 years from now as well. I think we know that from past experience with dealing with emergency situations.
And I do think that a lot of the interventionists, those are definitely related to COVID in terms when we're looking at identifying student gaps and learning loss, those are critical. So they are certainly appropriate here.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? So we're voting on reducing the budget based on the ESSER 2 funding that will be available. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None. All right, so that passes unanimously. So that brings us to any other motions that anybody would like to make to amend the main motion. Are we done? All right, let's see. So I saw two hands go up. We'll go with Ms. Harriman Stites and then Ms. Lideline after.
Yes, I'm just not sure where it would go. So
we should ask Tanya on that. So maybe let's talk about it first, Rebecca, I think, and then we can look at.
do you want me to make the motion and then we can talk about where it would go? Or does that need to be a part of the motion?
Why don't you ask your question? Yeah, so that you can formulate your motion.
Okay, so this would be funding for consultants to continue the work of the in the Peak Education and Diversity Subcommittee and start the work on the equity audit of the curriculum and teaching practices. I wasn't sure if that would go in general support services under the contracted services line or in the curriculum budget.
I think because Tanya, you can speak to that, but I believe it would be contracted services. That's where.
Yeah, that's correct.
Now.
And that's in the, okay.
Under general support, that's where we have a little piece of that budgeted right now.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, okay. That was my instinct, but I didn't want to misspeak in my motion. Okay, so I guess I'm ready to make a motion now.
All right.
Okay, so I'd like to increase the budget by $35,000 in the general support services under contracted services for consultants to assist in the continued work of the Diversity and Equity Subcommittee, including a plan for our curriculum and teaching practices equity audit.
Second.
Okay, so Ms. Harriman Stites makes the motion, Ms. Lideline seconds it. Do you happen to have that on a document written down that you could share your screen, or is it, no? Okay.
I have it in a text. I don't think I can share my screen, but I can surely send it to Kathy. And I think the explanation of the motion will clarify it if there's any questions. I mean, this is what we discussed at the last meeting. It was a conversation, conversations that have been had in the Diversity and Equity Subcommittee meeting. And then Dr. Rodrigue clarified in the meeting last time and was able to come up with an appropriate amount to request to increase the budget for that amount based on research about what other districts were doing and in discussions with our current consultants that are working with us in this area. So this would sort of continue the work that has been started and then put us in a place where we're ready to plan for and begin the curriculum and teaching practices equity audit, recognizing that it's a large project and we have a lot of other pieces to put in place and work to continue before we can start that work.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments? Ms. Lideline?
Yeah, actually, Ms. Harriman Stites said it very well. This is exactly why I had my hand raised also, was to add in this money. I think that this is a very important endeavor, that if we go away from it, it may in fact stall. And I think as long as we had the momentum and the motivation, I think we need to keep this moving forward. I think it's a very important practice that we need to undertake, and I'm in full support of this motion.
Good, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. D'Elia?
I'm just wondering where this is in the budget. What line, is it contracted am I looking at the right? Tanya, is it contracted services on page 146?
Yeah, it's under the general support budget. I can give you the page number.
I have it on page 153 is where I was looking, but I might be completely off.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's under the superintendent's budget.
Yeah, that's 153 contracted services line. I guess 500 it says.
That's correct.
And may I continue?
Yes.
We already had money in the budget for this, so we're just increasing the money that was already in the budget? Is
Did
that
not.
what's happening?
No, I probably misspoke. We don't have money in the budget for this particular item. We do have some professional development.
Okay,
So it wasn't for the recenter.
okay. Thank you. I was just curious about where it was and just wanted to make sure I understood everything. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, I don't see any. Ms. Herman Stites, could you just read the motion again so that we're clear on what we're
Sure.
doing?
It's to increase the contracted services line in the general support services budget for $35,000 for consultants to assist in the continued work of the Diversity and Equity Subcommittee, including a plan for a curriculum and teaching practices equity audit.
Okay. All right. So everybody, oh, Mr. Delia?
I'd also just like to note that this line item was, prior to this year, was $115,000. So when you look at it over time, you know, this is a very reasonable request, and I'm definitely in support of it. It's good for the kids too, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, sensing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. And then, I know I said I would go to Ms. Ladwine next, but it sounds like we've already covered what you were raising your hand for. Okay. All right, so is there anybody else? Mr. Delia?
Bob, did you get that number for painting?
Yes.
How much is it to paint a room?
So I estimated a cost of 2,600. Now that's using an outside vendor
Per room?
per room. Yes. And that's based on a classroom of roughly 800 square feet.
And that's just walls and trim and whatnot?
Yes, correct.
And how many rooms, do you know how many rooms are in the old part of Hawley? Where we walked.
I would say there's probably a dozen, plus or minus.
Okay. May I make a motion?
Yes.
I move that we add $30,000 to building and site maintenance projects to paint the rooms in the front of Hawley School.
All right, Mr. Delia makes a motion. For a second,
Second.
Mr.
Can
Vohl,
I interrupt for 1 second?
Go ahead, Bob.
Mr.
So
Gerber.
the only kind of caution I would issue is that with the proposed HVAC project, we could do a couple things. We could capture painting within that larger scope of work, or it might be a better idea to wait until that work is completed so we don't paint possibly this summer and then go in and wreck the place.
May I speak to my motion?
Yes, Mr. Delia.
I made this motion because I feel that those rooms need to be painted, and I think it's in the best interest of the children and the teachers to have the rooms in impeccable condition, even if it's for a few years. We know what we've been through with the Hawley project, and who knows how long it'll take. And I know that it's been approved in the CIP, but this is something that I feel is in the best interest of children and teachers. And I believe that if we paint the walls and the trim, that we will, I don't think they're gonna get trashed, but nonetheless, that's my motion.
Okay,
Thanks, Bob, by the way. Thanks for your input.
No problem.
and would anybody else, Mr. Voros, you seconded the motion. Did you want to speak to it or?
No.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments? Ms. Zukowski?
I'd like to hear what Mr. Moretti feels about spending it this year versus waiting for any of the hot HVAC disruption or that may or may not happen and you know, that type of trade-off.
Thank you for asking and thank you for the motion. Bob and I have these conversations at the beginning of every budget cycle when we walk the building and we look at what would be helpful to get done. We have our lists of things that are urgent and things that tend to slide down the list. Painting of rooms tends to always be one of those items that we talk about. We did do a couple, I believe, just recently. We had some teachers that moved rooms, so we took advantage of the rooms being empty and during remote learning, I know the custodians did do a couple of the rooms. So, I mean, Bob and I certainly can do a rewalk. We can look at the rooms, identify the ones that are in the most need. If you don't want to do them all at one time, I'm not sure we'd have to do all of them. Some are better than others. Some are worse for the wear if work does get done in there. I know that the guys went through and did some work recently and they were pretty good in cleaning up and not doing damage and not making any marks on the walls or whatnot. And knowing that the project is being sectioned into a couple of years, I would certainly support if that's something that people were in favor of moving forward. But I would trust Bob's judgment and be happy to have a conversation with him, but would certainly welcome it if that's something people are interested in doing.
Thank you.
May
All
I
right.
follow up?
Yes, Ms. Zukowski?
So either Bob or, either Mr. Gert or Mr. Moretti, how many rooms? I mean, would it be all for the 30,000 would be for all 15 rooms? In your estimation, how many rooms are in need, that are just so depressing, that are in need of painting in the 29 building?
I know on the top floor, there are 3 classrooms, a resource room, and our mindfulness room. Our mindfulness room was really completely done when we created it. And I think if you go in there, you'll see that probably does not need to be done. And the resource room was the one that was just recently done during the winter recess. So there's really 3 classrooms that we would look closely at on the upper 4th grade level. I know that our multi-purpose room, which is in the front of the building, was also recently done. So that would then have 4 classrooms. And I know 2 of them right off the top of my head are probably in need right away. They just stand out. I think they're the ones Bob and I walked in when we did the tour. But I'd have to look at the other 2. So you'd be looking at 7 rooms if in fact every room needed it. But that number could be less as we walked through with the keener eye.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, Mr. DeLeo?
May I amend my motion
Yeah,
to 18,200 for 7 rooms? Thank you, Mr. Moretti, for your input, by the way. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, 18,000 what?
200 for 7 rooms.
All right, so is there a second on that? Ms. Harriman states, are you?
Second.
Okay. So Ms. Harriman states second the motion, the amendment to the amendment for $18,700.
Michelle,
Yes, Mr. Farrar?
$18,200.
Oh, I'm sorry, 18,200. Okay. Mr. Voros?
My question, I think, is for Bob. Is it possible for the custodians over the summer to paint these rooms rather than contract them out?
Mr. Gerbert, I think that's for you, right?
Yes, so Mr. Voros, you're correct. The custodians we have at that building are fully capable, plus I have all the confidence in our maintenance staff if they had some opportunities to do that work as well. So I know the head custodian there, Brian Ballerini, he actually painted the school cafeteria. I want to say last summer, last fall maybe, and it came out beautifully. He did the adjacent stairwells. So he's a very talented individual. So certainly we could explore that alternative.
And were there other questions?
Thank you.
Ms. Zukowski?
So if it turns, if you're fairly confident that you could do this in-house, possibly over the summer, the question I would have is what would that estimate of a price be? And then is there enough wiggle room in your 5-year plan to fit it in, or would you need that money? This would be to Mr. Gerbert.
I'm pretty confident if we wanted to do it this summer, we could. The summer vacation is anywhere 8 to 10 weeks. So I think it could be certainly accomplished within that time frame, and it would drop the cost significantly. Obviously, you kind of lose the labor and overhead and markup that the contractor has. Plus, we're able to get paint pretty inexpensively. So, it could go from the number I quoted, 2,600, maybe down to 500 a room, give or take.
All right. I guess I have a question for you, Mr. Gerbert, and that is it fair to say that Holly has more need for painting in the rooms, or because I think in this case you're the one who, I know Mr. Moretti knows the rooms in his building, but you have an overview of the entire district, the middle school, the high school, all of our schools. Is there a reason that Holly might need painting more than the other schools at this point?
Obviously, it never hurts to freshen it up, and certainly I'll never say I don't need more money if somebody's going to offer it. But it comes up from time to time. I mean, the thing that's kind of interesting is we have a kind of a standard color for all the schools and all the rooms, so they all kind of mesh together in my mind because they all have the same color. But certainly there's always room to repaint a room. I mean, you could do them every year, but every couple of years, it's nice to brightens them up a little bit. Gives kind of a clean and fresh feel for the staff and the students as well.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any other questions, Ms. Zukowski?
I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment.
I don't, you
Oh, I
can't,
can't.
you can't make an amendment. Well, you could make an amendment. Let's see, we have an amendment to an amendment, which is, but you can't make an amendment to an amendment to an amendment. So
Okay.
once we vote on the amendment, if that passes, then that passes. If it fails, then you would be able to add another amendment.
I fully understand. So basically what I heard Mr. Gerbert say is we could do the 7 rooms for roughly $3,500.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else need to ask any more questions, more information? All right, sensing none, we will vote on the amendment to the amendment, which is to add $15,200 to the budget for painting of rooms at Holly. All right. All those in favor? And those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so we have Ms. Harriman Stites and Mr. D'Elia in favor and the remainder opposed, so that fails. So, Ms. Dukowski, if you were going to make an amendment,
Okay.
would be
I'm happy to sit back and let somebody else do it, if they would prefer. And seeing none, I amend that we add $3,500 to the budget for painting 7 needed classrooms.
okay. So the motion is to add $3,500 to the budget to paint rooms at Holly.
And if I may speak, I
Yes.
didn't say Holly, I said 7 needed classrooms.
Oh, okay.
Because it's, you know, if there were indeed at one of the other schools, something that was out of, you know, way out of line and, you know, and was much worse than 4 of the classrooms in Holly, it may make sense to give some amount of flexibility.
Point of order, point of order. The motion wasn't seconded.
Oh,
thank you. All right. So do we have a second on the motion?
Second for discussion.
All right. So Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. I'm sorry about that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Dukowski, you may continue.
Right. So I'm sorry about not it's been a long day, a lot of shoveling. I think we should give Mr. Gerbert some flexibility in terms of, you know, if there's a particular set of standout classrooms to let him have that flexibility. The default would be 7 classrooms at Holly, but as asked before, there may be a particularly bad classroom at one of the other schools too.
Okay. So the motion is to add $3,500 for painting as needed classrooms.
Michelle?
Yes, Mr. Voros.
Mr. D'Elia brought this up because he walks through Hawley and saw classrooms that were not to his liking. So the money is I would think, is to paint those classrooms at Hawley. If we have other rooms in the district that need to be painted, then we need to know that, I guess now, or we can find other money to give to Gerbert so he can paint those rooms. But the concern that Mr. D'Elia has is that those rooms at Hawley need to be done. So I don't think we should use the money to go elsewhere.
Okay. So essentially the amendment changes the amount in the original amended motion, the amount as well as the location. Just to be clear. Okay. Does everybody have enough information? All right, we will vote. So $3,500 for needed classroom painting. All those in favor? And any opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so Ms. Dukowski is voting in favor. The remainder are opposed, so that motion fails. And that brings us back to the amendment motion, which was $30,000 to paint Holly rooms. Does anybody have any further discussion on that before we vote? All right, so all those in favor?
Michelle, wait a minute. I'm confused.
Yes, Mr. Voros?
How did we go from the 3,500 to now 30,000?
So Mr. Delia's motion for 30,000 was an amendment to the main motion on the budget. And then the 3,500, there were two amendments to the amendment. I know it's confusing, but we have to vote on Mr. Delia's motion for the 30,000 because we haven't voted on it yet. We've only voted on the changes to his motion. And now we have to vote on his motion. Unchanged. It's not a changed motion. It's his original motion now.
So do we eventually get to make a motion to try to find the $3,500 for these rooms? And when does that happen?
You can do that after we're finished with Mr. Delia's motion if you'd like, or you can you can amend. Let's see, what can we do? Yes, Mr. Kowski.
I'd like to make an amendment to Mr. Delia's amendment for 3,500 specifically for 7 rooms at Hawley.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is it seconded?
Second.
All right, so we're back to an amendment to allocate $3,500 to paint rooms at Hawley School. Is there any more discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
By saying aye, raising your hand. All those opposed? All right, so Mr. Delia and Mr. Voros are in favor and the remainder are opposed. That means the motion fails. And now we're back to Mr. Delia's main motion again for $30,000 allocated to paint Hawley rooms. Any more discussion on that before we vote? All right, so all those in favor of allocating the $30,000 signify by, Mr. Delia, are you raising a point of order or you're voting? Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand. And those opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so Mr. Delia votes in favor, the remainder are opposed, so that motion fails. So we are back to our main motion of approving the superintendent's recommended budget, which now has 2 amendments to it. And Ms. Vadas is going to show us where we are at this point. All right, does anybody have a motion for their discussion? Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
I have a question based on what was said previously for the ESSER adjustments, that it was going to be, you know, I understand the added time needed for the summer school. And I understand that it may be known at a time when the Board of Finance has it, or at a time when the Board of the Legislative Council has it. So my question is a charter revision, charter question. And what is the process if we want? Will this impact the budget, or is this something we could do outside of the budget and therefore we wouldn't have to worry about the budget procedure?
So the summer school, it's not budgeted now, what we're looking at and what we're discussing. And the ESSER, so it would have no impact on the budget at all. And it has nothing to do with the other boards in terms of appropriations at all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, any other questions, amendments? I'm not seeing any, of course I can't see this. Oh. So does that mean we're done with budget amendments and discussion? All right. So I think, Ms. Fadas, I'm gonna need, just so that we know what the final amount is that we came to. So just so that everybody is aware of where we are, this is not a motion or anything, but just so that you know where we are after having made 2 amendments to the original motion. We are at, where are we? 80,000, or 80,682,470 dollars, and that's a 2.58% increase. Dr. Rodriguez, did you want to?
Yeah, this is just a question for Tanya. Tanya, do we want to put the diversity consultants under the ESSER 2, because that's not, we're adding the money to the budget, but not necessarily using, we're not using those funds. So I wouldn't put it under there as it's, thank you.
Absolutely correct. Sorry about that.
Wait, what did we just do?
We just moved the diversity consultant up to the technical adjustment because we're not using the ESSER 2 funds for that. That's an addition. So we just moved it from this section up to the technical adjustments.
Okay. But it doesn't change the total amount. Yeah, okay. So is everybody clear where we are at this point? All right. So can we take down the,
No, before you do that, I have a question.
yes, Ms. Zukowski?
So what I'm looking at on this worksheet is a total current proposed budget of 80,647,470. And if I look on the sheet I have printed out that we received prior to the meeting, I see 80,647,420 for an increase of 2.54. When the diversity consultants was in the ESSER, the increase was 2.58. When we moved it, did we account for the addition?
No, so I think the
Tanya, the 81,037 needs to carry down to the, right? 81 million, that should carry down, right? Yeah. There you go.
That looks better.
Yeah.
Okay. And really the diversity consultant isn't a technical adjustment. That's based on what the amendment was. I mean, it's not.
Well, I don't think there's anywhere else to put it. It would be, again, it's just one of those adjustments to the Board of Ed budget. So we're tacking it there. It's definitely not an ESSER 2 adjustment because we're not using ESSER 2 funds for that.
Yeah, Michelle, it's still under the Board of Ed adjustments to the superintendent's plan.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so is everybody clear on where we are at this point? Okay. So can I take this down, the spreadsheet down? And I think we can probably take our final vote on the superintendent's budget as amended. Does everybody understand what we're doing? Oh, did we lose? Somehow my screen rearranged. Now I don't know where everybody is. Okay, so we can vote on that. All those in favor of the superintendent's budget as amended signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? None, so that's, what am I missing?
There were definitely 7 ayes that I saw.
Okay. Oh, I know who I'm missing myself. Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. So that passes unanimously. I just want to make sure this is a big vote here. All right, so that brings us to the end of the budget discussion. Oh, and I just wanted to make clear, I know we had some public participation asking about the middle school and the position, the fax position at the middle school. I just want to be clear that there wasn't a budget adjustment to be made for that position. Is that correct, Dr. Rodriguez?
Correct.
All right, because there is the budget.
It's down, the family and consumer science is in the reduction, but there are the 2 additional courses in unified that are yet to be determined.
Okay.
So if you look at it that way.
All right, thank you.
I need to
All
make
right.
a motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeLeo?
I need to make a motion.
Oh, yes, please. One final motion for the evening.
I move that the Board of Education direct the business office to prepare the final budget and authorize the director of business to make any technical or, oh boy, arithmetic, any changes due to arithmetic.
Arithmetical.
Thank you. I had a tongue twister.
All right. So Mr. DeLeo
Second.
makes the motion, Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Is there any discussion about that? All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. And I think that concludes our discussion this evening.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Should we have the amended amount in that motion? Final, don't you think?
In the final motion?
Well, not this one. When you voted to, amend the budget, we don't have the final budget amount in the motion.
Well, so we don't ever have, so we're voting on the superintendent's recommended budget as amended. So we made several amendments. And then at the end of that discussion, I announced what that final amount was that was on the spreadsheet. So everybody's clear about what we're voting on. So the amount was announced as part of the discussion. We would have to amend the main motion because the main motion is still what it is. And so to change the amount, we'd have to amend the main motion. Does that make sense?
Okay, just checking.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Ledline, did you have a question?
Not a question. I just wanted to thank Ms. Fadas for all of her work. I know she's been very involved in putting together the budget previous to this year, but this is her first year going from STEM to STERN, and I just appreciate all of her hard work and her diligence and her presentation to this board and her thorough answer of questions. I just really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Indeed, thank you. Okay, so ending on that note, I think we will move to our public participation. And if there's anybody who would like to address the board at this time, you can unmute yourself using *6. And I'm sensing no public participation. We can close that out.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Dalia makes a motion
Second.
to adjourn. Mr. Cruson seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, so we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.